So the do now tasks in my lessons have appeared in a variety of ways. I've used it as a revision tool, looking at pre-existing knowledge, checking if they've understood key vocabulary, and as a practical task. This has appeared in my Year 7 lessons to basically find out what they do and don't know at the beginning of a scheme of work. And this has helped me sort of understand where I can pitch the lessons for the students. And then I've also, at the end of the scheme of work, used it as a time for revision, where we've had an open discussion about what they have and haven't learned in terms of key vocabulary and physical action as well. And then we have been able to use this throughout the scheme of work to see if they've picked up and understood key vocabulary and concepts. And sometimes I've given them word banks to help support them with this, but then the following lesson I will remove the word bank to see if they can actually articulate these ideas and concepts individually. And I will ask sort of 5, 6, 7 different pupils throughout the classroom, revisiting students that perhaps couldn't articulate this properly to begin with. I've also managed to include some practical element within my do now tasks whilst revisiting key vocabulary. So we would do an activity on the right, and then we would revisit what the vocabulary actually means. Also, I've occasionally just done a physical do now. Obviously at the top here it says starter, but this was a do now where the students lined up and all performed a slow motion race, and this just gave me an opportunity to assess the confidence and ability of students across the room, those that were engaging and those that were feeling a little bit more shy and vulnerable on stage. This was a task where I again didn't give vocabulary to help support, but I wanted to see what language they could come up with. This was quite early on in the scheme of work. Again, assessing their pre-existing knowledge. With Key Stage 4, it's been slightly different, but really the same sort of concepts have applied, seeing what they do and don't know, and then once they've learnt it, revisiting the gaps of knowledge. This was an activity I did with sixth form, where they had a range of images and language where they had to connect the social, historical and political context to their specific character that they were playing. One was playing a very sort of high profile businesswoman within the 80s, and one was a housewife, and they had to select what was relevant to their character. And then the following lesson they did something similar, where they were filling in a grid about their character, and again there's a word bank there to keep pushing this vocabulary. And I do think do nows are good for revisiting language, subject specific language. This was an activity I did with Year 10. This again is to try and get them using literacy and writing more within the subject, and the marks again to try and get them to write at length, and there was some language there to help support them. This was me attempting to be topical, bringing in what was happening that week or that month into the lesson, trying to get them to engage with the practitioner and make a link to the outside world. And I did this again with the petrol crisis. The first attempt they had sentence stems. The second I took those away, again trying to sort of elevate the difficulty of what it is they're doing lesson by lesson. With Year 9 I have often started with questioning, one to settle them down, and secondly to see that they're actually picking up this language and can articulate it and write about it at the end of the lesson, so they're prepared for the Year 10 and Year 11 coursework. Again, we would visit a topic, then the next lesson I would check that they'd actually understand what it is that we're talking about, things like satire, parody, subverting stereotypes. Similar thing with tragedy, I wanted to ensure that they understood the term catharsis, hamartia, and we would revisit this again and again at the beginning of the lessons to ensure that they'd understood those concepts. With Year 11, I've kept the questioning quite open and often used it as a tool to assess pre-existing knowledge. Obviously, as a Year 11 cohort, I need to know what gaps of knowledge I need to fill in, and obviously with COVID, they've had a lot of time out of the classroom, so I've really found the do nows useful at gauging what the students have and have not learned, and where I need to now fill in those gaps to prepare them for the devising unit and for the GCSE examination. I've also used it as a tool to get them to make decisions quickly during the devising process, because we are limited with our amount of time. So if they can, make snappy decisions at the beginning of the lesson, it's going to benefit me and them greatly. So here I've just summarised how I've used the Do Now. I think it's really important in settling students and a really effective tool for learning.